Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the alien facility, the human soldier known only as Wrecker lay in pieces. His body, once a fierce weapon in the hands of humanity, was now an object of study to the alien engineers. These beings, far more advanced than Earth's most brilliant minds, had captured Wrecker during a failed mission. They believed him to be just another outdated piece of human technology, primitive, easily broken, and ripe for dissection. They assumed dismantling him would reveal the secrets of a species they considered insignificant. The base, filled with alien technology and sleek machinery, hummed in anticipation as the engineers prepared for the task at hand. With tools made from materials unknown to human understanding, they began their work methodically and without hesitation. Their leader, an expert in alien anatomy and tech, oversaw the operation. The first tool, a sharp, needle-like device, sunk into the side of Wrecker's chest with a precise cut. The team didn't even flinch. They had done this hundreds of times before, taking apart machines, organic matter, and weapons from all corners of the galaxy. To them, Wrecker was no different. They had no idea what they were truly dealing with. The tool pressed deeper into his body, yet instead of the smooth, easy cut they expected, the metal resisted, almost as though it were fighting back. The needle got stuck, vibrating slightly before it finally pulled free with a harsh screech. The alien engineers exchanged puzzled glances, but none spoke. They were professionals, after all. The next tool, a laser cutter designed to slice through thick materials, was brought into play. The glowing beam aimed directly at Wrecker's damaged shoulder, where they planned to sever his arm from the rest of his body. The heat should have caused immediate, irreversible damage, but to their shock, the beam faltered. A faint glow pulsed from within the human soldier's arm, like a warning. The laser cutter hesitated, as if it were being repelled by something unseen. The lead engineer's brows furrowed in confusion. They had never encountered anything like this. His voice, normally filled with calm certainty, now had a hint of unease. "Continue," he commanded, though his words felt unsure. As another tool, a mechanical arm designed to pry and pull apart metal, reached for Wrecker's other leg, something strange happened. Wrecker's body, though lying motionless, seemed to respond. His skin, still damaged from previous battles, twitched beneath the surface. The alien tool grasped the leg and tried to pull, but the metal plates and synthetic tendons inside Wrecker's body tightened and adjusted themselves, resisting the force. It was as if his body had an intelligence of its own, reacting and adapting to every move made against it. The alien engineers stared, their hands frozen in mid-motion, unsure of how to proceed. The hum of the room became deafening, almost like a countdown, each second stretching longer than the last. With the alien forces unsure of their next move, the faint glow in Wrecker's body grew stronger, pulsing with life. His internal systems, thought to be shut down, were slowly flickering back to life. It was subtle at first, a barely noticeable flicker in the darkness. But to the keen eyes of the aliens, it was unmistakable. Wrecker's body was repairing itself in real time, faster than they could dismantle it. The alien engineers stepped back, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. They had encountered countless species and technologies, but none had ever fought back in such a way. To them, this was a puzzle, a challenge they had never anticipated. The soldier was just supposed to be a test subject, a broken machine to dissect, but it seemed that in his wrecked state, he had become something much more. A plan was forming, one that no one in the room could fully grasp yet. The humans had always been underestimated, but Wrecker, it seemed, had something they never expected, the will to survive. And that will, combined with his intricate design, would soon prove to be the aliens' greatest mistake. As the glow brightened, the engineers couldn't help but feel they were on the edge of something monumental, something they might not be able to stop. As the alien engineers continued their work, oblivious to the growing danger, Wrecker's mind slowly began to awaken. His body was broken, scattered across the cold metal table, but his consciousness still lingered deep within. The aliens believed him to be a mere machine, a piece of outdated human technology, something that could be easily dismantled and studied like any other object they had encountered before. They couldn't have been more wrong. What they didn't know was that Rekka's body wasn't just a weapon of war, it was a highly sophisticated creation, designed not only for combat, but for survival at all costs. His systems, although damaged, were still functional, and somewhere deep inside, Rekka's mind stirred, as faint and fragile as the flicker of a dying star, but growing stronger by the second. The alien engineers, confident in their knowledge, continued their work. They had seen machines break down and be rebuilt countless times in their own laboratories, but this was different. With every piece of Rekka's body that they tried to disassemble, his systems worked against them, subtly at first, almost as if his body was trying to protect itself. The first tool, designed to sever the wires running through his body, met an unexpected resistance. The engineers frowned, but dismissed it as a glitch in the system. They continued, unaware that the very moment they began dismantling Rekka, they were triggering his repair protocols. Within the depths of his cybernetic systems, microprocessors hummed to life, working in unison to patch the damage they were causing. Small fragments of his body, once thought beyond repair, began to reassemble themselves, fusing together with a precision that would have amazed even the most advanced scientists. The engineers were oblivious to the changes happening beneath the surface. To them, the slight resistance was nothing more than a malfunction, a minor glitch in a piece of old technology that would soon be corrected. But as they pressed on, the resistance grew stronger. Rekka's systems had detected the threat, and every fiber of his being was responding. His body, designed for rapid self-repair, began working at an accelerating rate. His muscles, though artificial, twitched, realigning themselves. His neural interface buzzed with activity, bypassing damaged sections of his brain, and his mind slowly started to regain control. He wasn't just lying there as a broken soldier, he was learning, adapting, and finding ways to fight back from within. The alien engineers exchanged confused looks. The tools they had used so confidently just moments ago now seemed ineffective, as though Rekka's body had become immune to their efforts. Each attempt to pry apart his limbs was met with more and more resistance. The lead engineer, an experienced technician with decades of work under his belt, raised his brow. He signaled to his team to increase the power of the tools, expecting that this would finally get through the human soldier's armor. But they were too late. Rekka's body, with its intricate systems of nanotechnology and self-repair algorithms, was beyond what they could comprehend. His cells, once thought to be simple organic matter, began to work together like a finely tuned machine, rebuilding and repairing with an almost eerie efficiency. Despite their efforts, the alien engineers couldn't understand what was happening. They had expected Rekka's body to fall apart, to break under the pressure of their tools, but instead, it seemed to resist them with a quiet, almost silent power. And still, they pressed on, oblivious to the fact that the very act of trying to tear him apart had unleashed something far more dangerous. Rekka's mind, though still tethered to the damaged shell of his body, was no longer dormant. It was aware, it was active, it was growing. As the engineers moved on to more advanced tools, trying to pry open his chest cavity, a faint pulse of light flickered beneath his skin, a signal to the engineers that something wasn't right. But by then, it was too late. The process had begun, and Rekka was far from the broken machine they thought him to be. The silent rebellion was underway, and they had no idea what they had just awoken. As the alien engineers continued their relentless work, they failed to realize that they had made a grave mistake. Each time they applied more pressure, every tool that cut into Rekka's body, each device designed to disassemble him, only triggered his systems to activate in ways they couldn't comprehend. His skeletal structure, a combination of organic tissues and synthetic metals, began to regenerate with remarkable speed. The engineers, focused on their work, failed to notice how quickly the damage they inflicted began to close up. The shattered pieces of Rekka's limbs fused back together as if his body itself had a mind of its own, one intent on surviving. The materials that had once been torn apart now flowed back into place, strengthening with each passing second. His body was not simply repairing, it was evolving, becoming stronger, faster, and more resilient. Rekka's neural network, designed to be deeply connected with his body, started firing impulses like a waking animal sensing danger. Slowly but surely, his mind began to stir within the confines of his damaged shell. Though his body remained pinned down, immobilized by restraints meant to keep him in place, his senses became sharper. He could feel every tool as it sliced into his flesh, every vibration in the air, every click of the alien machinery around him. His mind began to interpret these sensations with a clarity it had never experienced before. It wasn't just the pain or the pressure of their tools, it was the data they provided, feeding his understanding of their technology. He could hear their conversations, decipher their words. The alien engineers were speaking in a language unfamiliar to him at first, but his cognitive systems, adaptive and quick, had already begun to break down their communication. It didn't take long for Rekka to fully understand what they were saying, to piece together the scattered fragments of their words. But his intelligence didn't stop at just understanding their language. Rekka's neural network connected with the alien text surrounding him, analyzing every piece of their machinery, their tools, and even their systems. He could feel their interface trying to communicate with his damaged body. He knew how their equipment worked. He could see the weaknesses in their designs. Rekka was learning, adapting, and calculating. Every movement he made, even if it was just a slight twitch in his fingers, sent ripples through his system, further enhancing his capabilities. He wasn't just a broken soldier anymore. He was evolving into something far more dangerous, more capable than the aliens had ever imagined. The engineers continued to work, unaware that their actions were playing right into Rekka's hands. They thought they were gaining control over the situation, taking apart a weak and broken human soldier. But what they didn't realize was that each tool they used was just another opportunity for Rekka to rebuild himself. The laser cutter that had once been effective was now slicing through reinforced materials that had regenerated too quickly for the engineers to keep up with. The mechanical arms, once strong enough to pry open his chest, now struggled to grip his body as it shifted and adapted. With each failed attempt, Rekka's power grew. He wasn't just repairing, he was strengthening himself in ways that were beyond their understanding. As Rekka's mind connected further with his mechanical body, he saw the entire scene unfold like a chessboard. The engineers, trying to contain him, were making the fatal mistake of underestimating him. They were thinking in terms of their own technology, in terms of their control. They didn't understand that Rekka was no longer just a piece of outdated human tech. He was becoming something much more, a being with a purpose, a mind of its own, and the ability to turn the tables at the right moment. Rekka's calculations were precise. His body might have been pinned down for now, but he knew the moment would come when he would be able to act. He could feel the pulse of power rising within him, as his internal systems, now fully engaged, began to sync with his enhanced senses. He was learning from every cut, every strike, every movement the engineers made. They were the ones trapped in this game, not him. They believed they were the ones in control, but the truth was they had already lost. With each passing moment, Rekka grew stronger, more aware, more capable. The time to strike was approaching, and when it came, the engineers would realize far too late that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they ever could have imagined. The situation inside the alien laboratory began to change in a way no one could have predicted. The engineers, once calm and confident, now found themselves growing increasingly uneasy. Their tools, which had been designed to tear through the toughest materials, struggled against Rekka's body as it continued to regenerate. At first, the resistance had been subtle, just a slight delay in the progress they expected, but now it was impossible to ignore. Rekka's body was no longer simply healing, it was improving, evolving beyond what had been before. The more they tried to dismantle him, the stronger and faster he became. At first, the engineers tried to tell themselves this was just a fluke, an unexpected malfunction. But as Rekka's body began to visibly enhance itself, even they couldn't deny the reality. His synthetic muscles, once damaged and torn, now looked stronger, tighter, more capable. His skeletal structure, a mixture of organic and cybernetic parts, was now reinforced in ways they couldn't explain. Every fiber of his being seemed to pulse with new energy. The alien engineers scrambled to understand what was happening. They had never encountered a human soldier like this before, and the more they worked, the more they realized how little they knew about the technology they were dealing with. What they thought was just a broken relic from a primitive species had turned into a force far more dangerous than any they had encountered. In a panic, the lead engineer barked orders at his team to increase the power of their tools, but it was too late. Rekka's body had already adapted, and his self-repair mechanisms were working at full capacity, surpassing any measure the engineers could apply. What was once a vulnerable soldier on an operating table was now a terrifying machine of unparalleled strength. The repairs to his body didn't stop at simply fixing what was damaged. They began incorporating alien tech, seamlessly fusing the advanced tools and materials they had used against him into his own systems. His circuits were now intertwined with pieces of alien technology, components that allowed him to interface with their own systems. He was no longer just a human soldier. He had become something far more formidable, something the engineers couldn't control. Rekka's mind, now fully aware of his surroundings, processed the information with incredible speed. He understood the alien systems, their language, their technology, and now he could control it. The engineers, realizing their tools were useless, started to panic. They tried to shut down Rekka's systems, flooding his body with electromagnetic pulses designed to overload his circuits. But their attempts were futile. Each time they sent a surge of energy into him, Rekka's adaptive systems absorbed it, used it, and turned it into fuel for his regeneration. The engineers could only watch in horror as their attempts to stop him only made him stronger. Then it happened. Rekka's body, now completely repaired and enhanced, shifted with unnatural precision. His eyes, once dull and lifeless, glowed with a fierce intensity. The previously dormant combat protocols, hidden deep within his neural network, were now activated. With a sudden surge of power, Rekka moved, his body twisting free from the restraints that had once held him in place. The force was so great that the metal bindings snapped as though they were nothing more than brittle plastic. The engineers, now fully aware of the nightmare they had unleashed, scrambled to react, but it was too late. Rekka, with his enhanced strength, speed, and combat capabilities, was already in motion. He launched himself across the room with a speed that defied the alien engineers' expectations. His body, once just a shell of flesh and metal, now moved with the deadly precision of a trained soldier, only now he was far more than human. The engineers barely had time to react as Rekka activated his newly integrated weapon systems. The room was filled with the sound of metal against metal, the crash of equipment being torn apart with ease. It wasn't just physical strength. Rekka was now connected to the alien systems around him, using their technology against them. He hacked into the lab's security systems, shutting down the defense mechanisms and turning their own weapons against them. The engineers, who had once seen themselves as the superior beings, were now caught in a desperate fight for survival. The alien base, once a place of cold, calculated control, had turned into a deadly battleground. Rekka, fully aware of his power and capabilities, moved through the facility like a storm. The tools they had used against him were now meaningless. He was beyond their control. As his combat protocols continued to run, the engineers realized that they had made one fatal error. They had underestimated humanity. Rekka wasn't just surviving, he was taking back control, and they were completely powerless to stop him. Rekka's body surged with a newfound power, a force that shattered the restraints that had once held him in place. The operating table, now no more than a broken piece of equipment, clattered to the floor as he stood tall, his enhanced form towering over the alien engineers. His mind, fully awakened and operating with incredible clarity, began to process the situation with chilling precision. The alien base, once a cold and sterile laboratory, transformed into a chaotic battleground in the blink of an eye. The engineers, now realizing the full extent of the nightmare they had unleashed, scrambled in panic, trying to activate their defense systems, but it was already too late. Rekka moved like a blur, faster than the aliens could react. With each step, the weight of his enhanced body hit the floor with a thud, and his movements were as fluid as they were deadly. He was a whirlwind of destruction, a force that couldn't be contained. As he stormed through the corridors, his mind processed everything around him. The alien technology that had once been used to tear him apart now became an extension of himself. Every piece of tech he encountered, whether a weapon, a control panel, or a piece of machinery, was absorbed by his body, seamlessly integrating into his systems. With each new piece of technology, Rekka's abilities grew stronger. His senses sharpened further, his reflexes became almost instinctual, and his strength multiplied. The security systems, which had been built to protect the alien base, now turned against their creators. Rekka hacked into their systems effortlessly, turning the very weapons designed to stop him into tools that aided his escape. Blast doors that were meant to lock him in were now his entryways. Laser grids that once served as a final defense were deactivated with a flicker of his mind. The aliens had built a fortress to hold him, but Rekka was becoming a one-man army, unstoppable and untouchable. In the halls of the base, alarms blared, echoing off the cold, metallic walls. Alien soldiers, armed with energy rifles and advanced combat gear, rushed to intercept him. But Rekka moved like a shadow, slipping through their lines with deadly precision. Each encounter ended with brutal efficiency. A soldier aimed a weapon, but before they could fire, Rekka was already upon them, disarming them in one swift motion and using their own weapon against them. He didn't waste time. Each move was calculated, each strike designed to neutralize, not just harm. The base's once thriving corridors, filled with alien life and machinery, now became his domain. He was no longer a prisoner. He was the predator, and they were the prey. The alien forces quickly realized they were in over their heads. They had been the ones in control, confident in their superiority, but now they were scrambling to defend themselves against an enemy they could not comprehend. Rekka's human ingenuity, combined with the advanced alien technology he had absorbed, made him a force they couldn't control. They attempted to mobilize reinforcements, but it was clear that no matter how many soldiers they sent, they couldn't contain him. Every strategy they had relied on was useless. Rekka was not only stronger and faster, he was evolving with every step. The more technology he absorbed, the more powerful he became. What had once been a simple human soldier was now something far more dangerous, a hybrid of human resilience and alien innovation. The lead engineer, now frantic, ordered his team to initiate a full lockdown of the facility. Blast shields began to lower, security drones took flight, and the entire base seemed to close in around Rekka. But it didn't matter. The moment they activated their defenses, Rekka was already inside the central control room. With a surge of his new abilities, he bypassed every security measure and locked the control center down. He had gained full access to the facility's core systems. With a single thought, he disabled the base's main power grid, plunging the entire complex into darkness. The alien forces were now trapped in their own creation. Panic spread as the engineers tried in vain to regain control, but their systems were nothing compared to the human ingenuity now at work. Rekka stood in the heart of the base, surrounded by chaos, his body glowing faintly with the alien energy coursing through him. He was no longer just fighting to survive, he was fighting for control, and he had it. The aliens had underestimated him, and now they were paying the price. As the facility descended into chaos, Rekka took a final decisive step towards his escape. The aliens had unleashed something they could never control, human ingenuity in its most dangerous form, and now it was unstoppable. The Alien Council convened in a secret, high-security chamber deep within the heart of the base. The room was filled with representatives from the most powerful alien species in the galaxy, each of them fiercely protective of their territory, each bringing their own advanced technology and ancient strategies to the table. Yet, for the first time in their collective histories, they were faced with a problem they could not solve. Rekka, a primitive human soldier, had turned their own weapons and technology against them, wreaking havoc across their once impenetrable base. The engineers had underestimated him, and now their failure was undeniable. The alien leaders, known for their ruthlessness and unyielding control, found themselves in a rare moment of desperation. The damage Rekka had caused was significant. He had already breached their most secure systems, neutralized their top defense units, and wreaked havoc on their energy core. The situation was dire. The council leaders, frustrated and enraged, knew they had no choice but to act quickly. This was no longer a simple containment problem. Rekka was not just a prisoner. They realized now that he was a force of nature, one that was growing stronger with every move. The alien council understood one thing well. When they were faced with a threat they couldn't control, they responded by uniting their forces. An alliance of alien races, each known for its own formidable technologies and combat prowess, was quickly formed. Their combined armies, each equipped with devastating weaponry and defense systems, were now being mobilized with one purpose in mind: to destroy Rekka and restore order to the base. However, the Council quickly discovered that this new alliance was already facing the same overwhelming problem that had plagued their engineers: Rekka's adaptive nature. Every time the alien forces attempted to overwhelm him, every new weapon they deployed or strategy they devised, Rekka's body adapted with terrifying precision. His neural networks, now fully integrated with the alien technology he had absorbed, allowed him to predict their every move. He wasn't just reacting anymore, he was anticipating their actions before they even occurred. Rekka's mind had become an advanced processor, calculating their tactics and countering them with swift, devastating force. The alien alliance found themselves in a constant game of catch-up, while Rekka stayed one step ahead, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. The alien forces, though vast and technologically superior in many ways, had never encountered an enemy like Rekka. His body, once human, had become a hybrid of organic and mechanical, constantly evolving to meet new challenges. The more the aliens threw at him, the more he absorbed, the more he adapted, and the stronger he became. Their weapons, designed for the most advanced threats, were powerless against him. Their tactics, honed over centuries of warfare, were rendered ineffective by his unpredictable and constantly evolving strategies. The alliance, made up of the best warriors, scientists, and tacticians, was now in the unenviable position of fighting an enemy who could not be contained, let alone defeated. The council leaders, now fully aware of the grave situation, began to realize the true extent of their mistake. They had underestimated the power of human resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability. Rekka wasn't just a threat to the base. He had become a symbol of humanity's potential to overcome even the most advanced and ruthless enemies. The council members debated fiercely, but no one could find a solution. They knew that if they didn't act soon, Rekka would not only escape, they feared he would bring down their entire empire. But their options were limited. Their most advanced weapons, their top soldiers, and their greatest strategies had all failed. Meanwhile, Rekka, fully aware of the alien forces gathering against him, began preparing for his final move. He had been methodically planning every step, studying their weaknesses, and learning from every encounter. He knew that the alien alliance was desperate. They were running out of time, and so was he. This was his chance to end their reign of terror once and for all. The time for hiding, for evading, was over. Rekka had absorbed everything he needed. Now, it was time to strike. His plan was set into motion, a strike so precise, so devastating, that the alien base would crumble under the weight of its own failure. Rekka's mind, sharper than ever, was ready to deliver the final blow. The alien alliance had unleashed a force they could not control, and now they would face the consequences of their arrogance. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. The heart of the alien base was a place of cold, calculated precision, a stark contrast to the chaos that now surrounded it. Deep within its core, the leaders of the Alien Alliance stood, their collective minds racing as they prepared to launch their ultimate weapon. They had gathered the best of their forces, pooled their most advanced technology, and constructed a plan designed to crush Wrecker once and for all. What they didn't realize, however, was that from the very beginning, they had been fighting a war of attrition, one they could never win. Wrecker, far from being a simple victim, had turned the tide of this conflict with every step he took. He hadn't just survived the alien assault, he had thrived. With each new battle, each new challenge, he had learned more. The technology they had used against him, the strategies they had deployed, the weaknesses they thought they could keep hidden. Wrecker had absorbed it all. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a living embodiment of humanity's will to survive, evolve, and overcome. As the alien leaders gathered, confident that their final weapon would put an end to the nightmare, Wrecker stood at the center of the battlefield, his enhanced body glowing with the power of the alien technology he had integrated. The leaders were preparing to deploy their ultimate strike, an energy weapon capable of wiping him out in an instant. But Wrecker was no longer the weak, broken soldier they had first encountered. His body, now a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology, was ready to unleash its full potential. Every part of him was alive with energy, every circuit and muscle tuned for combat. He had been pushed to the brink and beyond, but now he was a force that nothing could stop. With a flicker of his mind, Wrecker activated his systems, pushing his body beyond its limits. The alien weapon fired, a blinding pulse of energy aimed directly at him, but Wrecker was faster. With a fluid motion, he dodged the blast, his enhanced reflexes and predictive algorithms allowing him to stay one step ahead. As the energy beam missed its target, Wrecker moved in, his body a blur of motion as he took down the alien forces standing between him and the leaders. The once unstoppable Alien Alliance was now in disarray, their greatest weapon failing in the face of his unyielding will. The alien leaders, seeing their final hopes slip away, attempted to retreat, but Wrecker was already there, anticipating their every move. He knew their tactics, their fears, their weaknesses. In one decisive strike, he dismantled the command center that housed the Alliance's leadership. But Wrecker didn't kill them, not out of mercy, but because his mission was not one of vengeance. His purpose was clear. He wasn't fighting for revenge, he was fighting for liberation. The freedom of the humans held captive in the base, the freedom of every life the Alien Alliance had oppressed for centuries. With a final, overwhelming surge of power, Wrecker triggered the collapse of the base's core systems. Explosions ripped through the facility as the alien infrastructure crumbled, the walls shaking with the force of the destruction. As the base began to fall apart, Wrecker stood amidst the chaos, watching the once imposing structure crumble under the weight of its own hubris. The alien forces were in full retreat, their power slipping away, their empire unraveling. The humans who had been held captive, used as experiments and slaves, began to emerge from the shadows, free at last. Wrecker's heart pounded in his chest, not with rage, but with triumph. He had done it. He had brought down the alien threat, not through brute force alone, but through the strength of his mind, his will to survive, and the unwavering spirit of humanity. The battle was over, but the war for freedom had been won. As the alien base crumbled into the dust, Wrecker knew one thing for certain: humanity would always find a way to survive, to adapt, and to thrive, no matter the odds. And as the first rays of freedom touched the wreckage of the alien empire, Wrecker's legacy was sealed, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a symbol of hope for all who had been oppressed.